Hi guys, welcome back to the podcast. Today I have my really good friend Hannah Anthony.
Hey.
Hannah Squared. You guys have probably seen her on like a lot of my stuff. She's a physio in the Calgary area who I actually have worked with many of my clients. She's definitely a physio that has kind of moved into more of that progressive sense. Like she prioritizes movement and wants people to be able to continue to move throughout their treatment, which is something that I really, really look up to and appreciate. And I just want to send like everyone in Calgary to you. So,
Which I appreciate. Thank you for that.
yeah. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today. Do you want to just kind of give everyone like a brief background of like where you came from and where you are now?
Yeah, sweet. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And so like Hannah was saying, I'm a physio here in Calgary. I'm from Calgary and did my undergrad here just at the UC in kinesiology. Went to Australia, University of Queensland and Brisbane to do my master's program, stayed there for a few years and then moved back just last year, pre-COVID. So basically, I've always worked in private practice, which I find the most interesting and the most fun as well and like fulfilling for this side of what physio looks like. And so right now I'm at a clinic that is multidisciplinary. So we have physio, massage, chiro, sports med, and psychologist. So that in itself kind of like sums up how I like to kind of like treat as well, and why Hannah and I work so well together too, is kind of creating that team around our clients. So a lot of times it takes more than just like one brain or like one set of eyes to really get someone to kind of like meet their goals or reach their potential, and to just like make sure that we're kind of looking at all aspects of what might be contributing to someone's like limitations or pain. So having that team around someone is, yeah, super beneficial. And so, yeah, that's why Hannah and I work so well together. And we've had lots of clients kind of get back to their goals too, which is what we'll kind of chat about today.
Yeah, I think that leads us into kind of like the start of the conversation of how we've worked together. This is something that I talk to people about all the time, and like why I actually really appreciate you so much, because you really do value the role of a coach, like in this process for people, and also the role of like movement in everybody's daily life and like keeping that a priority throughout kind of the rehab phases. So what kind of, is there anything specifically that you can contribute to that? Like, is it maybe the environment that you started in, or?
I think it might be maybe just like how I even train myself and kind of like knowing the benefit of what having a program is like. So I don't have a specific like trainer coach right now, but I was going to a gym for a while that programmed things just in like a really great way that was super easy to follow, and like you could kind of see your progress, lots of different skills that you could then work on. And I think that we like as physios in school, you like as much as we're supposed to be movement experts and like exercise and everything, they don't give you as much tools and like information as you probably need to help like the variety of clients that we actually end up seeing. So I feel like it was actually a mix of like my own experience and then like where I was training, and then how I've kind of like brought that training into like rehab exercises, and then how I've now morphed my own training into kind of like longevity and a bit of like trying to reduce chance of injury and just be able to like continue to feel good, and going through like I suppose my own little like not even aches and pains, just like little changes that I've had to make in my program. I feel like it's just weirdly transitioned over into like how I then treat clients, because it's just like if you look at yourself even just as like we know that we don't want to stop like moving because it's like such a huge part of our life. And so that if a client comes in and they're just like, oh yeah, like I really keep like I just want to be doing this thing and like I just can't still. And so rather than just being like, okay, let's figure out how we can change that exercise or whatever it might be to just like get you to keep moving. So it was kind of more of like how I've trained over the years, I think, that actually kind of like morphed into my practice versus the environment. Because hopefully I would do that in any environment.
I can really relate to that, like as a coach, because I think we maybe like I get the sense that we kind of grew up with the same type of like sport background where it was like
Yeah.
that all or nothing mentality. And I really had to work on that mindset shift. Like after having a couple things in my low back, like I don't have to be going at this intensity all the time. And like I did a post today actually on the all or nothing mindset and like social media and just media in general. People that start in fitness or like are working on their health and movement, I think they often fall into that mindset of like, I have to do everything and I have to do it perfectly and I have to be the best instead of that like longevity mindset. Like I've kind of created this really nice relationship with movement now where I'm like, oh, I actually just want to spend my whole day like out in nature and move my body that way instead of having like pressure on myself of like, oh, I've got to get my sixth workout in or I'm like not the best trainer. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, which is pressure for you too as a trainer, because people would be
Yeah.
like looking at that.
Yeah. And like it's a good mindset shift that I think also like I touch on that so much with my clients because I think people think even you can even relate that back to like the rehab kind of population, like feeling that sense of like I have to obsessively like be the best at this thing. And it's like, well, maybe you could just like walk a bit more or like do more global movement and just focus on that long-term goal.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think people get stuck probably a little bit on like, maybe either way, they get stuck on like one long-term goal and they like, this is where it comes into like what you and I do is like how to get themselves to that like bigger long-term goal. Or it's just like a bunch of these like short-term goals that then don't actually accumulate into anything. So then it doesn't even feel like progress or change or anything like that too. So it's kind of like, yeah, where we probably come in and do our best work.
Yeah, definitely seems to be like our kind of clientele that we run into for sure.
Definitely. Yeah.
I think it's good to like have that conversation with people too and this is something I really appreciate about you and I know that this is something that you prioritize. Like you mentioned to me like when we were chatting before this, like I asked you what are some things that you should look for in a physio and like kind of feel out on the first session and you said like do they spend the entire hour with you? And I know that you prioritize the conversation of like the biopsychosocial aspect of things, like what are the daily stresses that people are having and like what are their like relationships look like or their like physical emotional trauma and like all of those things that play into that like accumulative strain and the reason why they're there. I think that's like something that a lot of people are missing. So do you want to maybe touch on that a little bit more? Like what does that process look like of like the conversation that you have with the client and how you relate it back to like the long-term goal?
Yeah, I usually like they'll fill in an intake form before I end up seeing them. So I definitely read through that and just see whatever they thought was probably like the most important information is what they would have like written down or just like sometimes it's actually just the quickest information that's like knee and I'm like all right great like let's see what's going on and so that's actually kind of like what will happen. I'll just be like hey I read your intake form like I have this background information but I want to chat to you about it anyway. So like basically tell me like your story, like tell me what built up to this point, tell me what you feel on a day-to-day. So I try to not even narrow it down. I might say like, hey, you wrote like knee. So like maybe give me some specifics on that. But when I open up just like have like an open-ended question rather than being like, what's wrong with your knee? It's like, what is it you're kind of like dealing with on a day-to-day? Like, what are the issues that you find? I find that people, then they tell me their story. So however long that ends up taking, if it's like a really in-depth story, then like it could take like 15 minutes or something of them just kind of explaining that stuff to me, which is fine because that's obviously important to them. And then sometimes it ends up getting a little bit more than the bigger pieces of the puzzle, because instead of me trying to like direct the conversation and asking kind of like the really typical physio questions, which like we'll still get around to, but I like to hear it from their words first in terms of like those typical things like what aggravates it and what eases it and like when do you get your pain and where exactly is it and like all those really small details which are still important for me to kind of like start hypothesizing what's going on and figuring out a treatment direction. But just asking them in general what is going on, then people sometimes do already connect those dots of like, well, it does get worse when like I've had a really long day at work, or it does get like, it has been worse this last little bit because I'm in exam season, or those types of things. And so I don't even have to like prompt them for that. I basically just like listen and then almost just like confirm and like validate that like, yeah, those other stressors and other situations that are going on will have a role in what's going on. And then it's just out in the open. So then if it's like we start treating and stuff, and I can just kind of like maybe ask a few more questions that goes down one of those paths too. That's just like, oh, you mentioned, yeah, like about exam situations, and like, so what's the setup around that? Like, how are you? Yeah, how are you sleeping? How are you sitting? Do you have breaks? Like how all that stuff goes. And so it turns into a pretty easy conversation and a pretty easy way to find out, yeah, a bit more information about the whole person and how they deal with certain things, versus kind of those narrow questions that are just pertaining to that one area of injury, which is just very, it's just very limited when you're trying to, yeah, help the whole person, which is my end goal. Like, let's get rid of the knee pain, but like, let's figure out how we can like keep it at bay, probably come out of this stronger than you were before, give you some new strategies. So that kind of explains it a little bit. Might have went on a tangent a bit with that, but it's a bit of more of like a, we'll listen to the story from that person.
No, I think it's so good because people that are listening have likely at some point experienced some type of physio relationship. And I, like, not to take it a negative route, but like I do hear negative experiences from people more than I don't. And I just think like the way that you approach the client in front of you, and like you said, the whole person, is like, I admire that so much. And every single person that I've ever sent your way has like called me or texted me and been like, oh my gosh, Hannah's so amazing. She, like, I've never felt so heard by a physio before. And I think that alone has such an impact on like the client just feeling that support, and also their likeliness to adhere to the things that you give them, right? Having that like 15-minute in, 15-minute out, here's a tens machine, like kind of feeling doesn't make you really feel cared for, and you don't actually really care about the plan, right? Because it hasn't been explained to you, and they also haven't taken the time to get that like whole picture.
Yeah, definitely. And like a lot of like, yeah, I hate that type of physio in general, but I don't want to like shit on the physios who have to be in those situations. It does suck. It's more of like a time crunch, but it is one of those things where it's like, those people were probably going to get better with time anyways, if that was going to be the case, right? Because like there's not a whole lot going into it. Yeah, you're not really listening to the person. You probably, if you had knee pain, you probably got the same exercises as like the knee pain person right before you. Like it's not specific, it's not really individualized, it's probably not towards your goals, it's just towards no knee pain, which are kind of like two different things. Like they're both related, but it's not really like helping you on your way to what your goal actually is. And that's like the biggest thing, even with like helping clients too, is like, yeah, we want to get rid of the knee pain, but like at the end of the day, it's more about like, can you do the things that you want to be doing? So like, even if your knee hurts a little bit when you're doing it, it's like, okay, you know, like, let's check that out. But if you can do it, then like, that's going to be the most important thing for your well-being and for your, like, again, you as a person rather than like you as a knee.
100%. Yeah, what you just said, you as a knee, like, yeah, you are not.
You're not your knee. Yeah.
It's so true. Like I can, like in my industry specifically, I think our industries obviously have a lot of crossover, but specifically in my industry, like I deal with that a lot too, where like I have to really work hard, and like that's fine. That's the role that I've decided to take on as a coach, but like really working with people to get out of that like cookie cutter mindset, like those apps that like aren't tailored to them, and like movement is always better than no movement, but like if you really are looking for something specific, you have to be working with someone that takes that specific approach and like takes the time to understand you and really what you need.
Yeah, pretty much, which is like because like a lot of the clients that we do share, that is kind of what it has come down to, is that like they're with you for that reason as well. Like they get that individualized plan, and then you're checking in with them all the time and basically making sure it's working, and then like giving them that extra support that they need as well. So it's like they won't get that from an app, they won't get that from a Instagram like exercise video. Like it's so much bigger than that.
Hmm. Yeah, that specific approach is huge. And I think like if we shift maybe over a little bit to like our clients and the way that we work together, um, I also wanted to talk today with you about that collaborative role of like the physio and the coach working together, because I've been a trainer for quite a while, and I've never actually really experienced like the relationship that I have with you and like that kind of teamwork when it comes to the clients and like client-centered approach, um, which I really appreciate. What do you think that looks like or should look like for each client? Like I know we kind of have our process, but like um, what's your opinion on that and like training while they're doing physio?
I think like step one is the physio does need to do, and I wouldn't even call it like extra work. The physio needs to be in communication with that trainer, whether you're going to specifically work together the way that you and I do, or the way, however, like it's really hard for the client to get everything across of what you just did in your physio session to their coach or to their trainer. Like it might come across, but it might be a bit muddled. Like the client might not really remember what you said. So that communication piece is key. Whether or not you're going to then like make a plan afterwards, basically like talking to the trainer, just letting them know what you did, and then going from there. So that's super important. And then I think that what was the second half of that question? When or like how should we kind of like do both?
Yeah, like what ideally is a physio, like based on, I mean, like we could just touch on our experience. Like something that I really appreciate from you is that you always send me that like initial email, like that. And I mean, really, you do it every time, which I really appreciate, because it's like you're not, that channel of communication is direct from you, like you just said. And it's not this like Chinese whispers, like muddled thing from the client, because the client's not going to remember everything that you said to them. So like that direct communication is so huge.
Yeah.
What does like the ideal trainer physio relationship look like to you, like after that point, like continue?
Ours is really super handy. Basically, like it's so it's so handy and so convenient for me, because it's like I know that I'm giving the client like maybe some specific exercises from the things that we found in our session, like that day or that week, whenever it was, and then I can send that through an email that like you get and that they get, and then I know that it'll be like put into like their warm up, or it's going to be just like part of like on their off days or something like that. But then I can basically trust that like they're then going to be getting like a program that is working the, again, like the bigger picture goals. So it's just like it's so well rounded in that sense. And so I guess like that's kind of what it comes down to. I don't know if this is answering the question, but it's basically like physio is going to like, we can kind of like get through some of those like more like nitty gritty problems that it's like maybe as a trainer you're like, oh, something's going on, but like we've tried a couple things and like I don't really like these things just aren't like fixing that problem or aren't like getting the progress that we want. And then I have more time to like get down into like kind of like the what might be contributing to that, give those sort of like more specific tailored exercises, and then those either progress into what like the exercise should look like, or like a bigger harder exercise, or like I was saying, it becomes kind of like a warm up or a accessory movement within the rest of their workout. So that to me is kind of like the ideal, so that it's not just like the physio exercises, which is usually just like a few, really depending on the client. And then it doesn't become it doesn't become as well rounded. It's almost just like it becomes really like choppy. I find when someone isn't working with a trainer and it's like just coming from me, that's kind of the word I use. It's very choppy, because then I'm like, okay, well, like these exercises are working, those ones were working in the past. I don't want to give you a million exercises because it's not quite a workout plan. It's kind of all a bit like rehabby type stuff. And so it gets a little bit lost in translation a bit when someone yet doesn't have a trainer to then keep guiding them towards like those goals. So I find that like super, super helpful. Even if they're not working towards like a super specific goal, more just like basically staying healthy and moving, is just having that trainer to make the rest of that, like the plan for them is handy for me. And then obviously for the client.
Yeah, it's like bridging that gap, right? Like,
Yeah.
I find so many people, like in my experience in the past, like I used to do a lot of, naturally I became like the rehab trainer when I was in corporate because I was the only one that like had a kines degree. So I was like, okay, like here I am, got to figure it out. But I found so often those people that were coming to me had like skipped the physio process. And I think it goes both ways. Like they skipped that physio process, or they maybe didn't find like a physio relationship that they felt was kind of worthy of continuing.
Yeah.
Or they did the physio, but then they just think like, okay, I'm just going to stop there. Right. And it's like having all those pieces together is so crucial so that there's like that smooth transition and progression into going back and doing the things that you love. Right. Like just doing your physio exercises and then going running like 10K, like slowly build that up, right? And like have a proper warm up and like have someone guide you on that. So I think it can go both ways. And what I've experienced like until I met you is that that's a pretty big missing piece. It's like not the client not always having both people on their team, which obviously someone has to be in a financial place to do that, which I understand. But another reason why I think personal training should also maybe be covered in some cases for people.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think it's such an interesting conversation and like something that I think about all the time and I talk to my clients about when I send them to you, because I've never really seen that relationship be like prioritized like in my own career until I met you. I think it's pretty cool. And we've had like some really good client successes, and like I think our clients just feel really supported, like, and they love that they're getting that communication all the time, and then that communication is happening between us. I think it's like such a big piece of the client actually sticking to what they need to do.
Yeah, it takes so much pressure off them as well. They're just like, this plan is made, it's made for me. And like, I know the two people who are taking care of me are talking to each other. I have lots of clients who do actually bring that up too. They're just like, because I'll be like, yeah, I like just spoke to Hannah about this. And they'll be like, oh my God, awesome. Like, then I don't have to like explain it again, or I don't have to like go through that. And yeah, to kind of go back to like that gap as well. I think that again, within physio, it's just like, for some reason, we just like don't get taught enough like exercise-based stuff. And so we focus so much on the basics, which is great. Like, cool, nail the basics because that's where the foundation is going to build from. But that transition to higher intensity stuff, or sometimes even life, but definitely like higher intensity stuff, unless you as the physio have like done that sport yourself or something, it's like you just don't learn those higher level exercises and movements to then give to your client too, because I feel like that is also such a gap. It's like in some people's minds, like rehab exercises and like physio exercises are like boring and like hard at first, maybe painful, and then they get really easy, and then like you said, you just like go run 10K and you're like, okay, there is definitely something in between those two things. And it's either like the physio doesn't know how to keep progressing those things, and like you said, the client then is just like, okay, well, I'm out of pain, so I'm going to stop seeing the physio. They didn't tell me to go do anything else, so like I guess I'm good, like I'm just going to go run now. And so it's definitely like that poor communication and just like poor planning, and then that huge gap between what a physio does or like maybe should do, or like at that point where then like in a conversation that I have with a client, I'm like, okay, well, like, yeah, I can help you keep getting there, but we could also bring someone else in who's then actually probably going to get you there probably a bit more efficiently, I would say, because they can check in with someone like you like more often. It's going to be more than, again, just like 5 physio exercises that are done in like this little circuit or something. It's actually going to be a plan, and it's going to be a workout, and it's going to be continual. And so that's kind of, again, like, yeah, just bridging that gap. And like even physios being confident in like referring clients, I think too. Like I wonder if it's also just a bit of like a ego complex that some physios are just like, well, like, why would I do that when it's just like, oh, I gave them all these things, they're out of pain, like my job is done. It's like, okay, but again, if you're thinking about the client and their goals, like the pain is better, but it's just like, well, are they back at what they're doing yet? Like, no. So I don't know if you did finish your job or if that was the best way that it could have been sorted out. So I guess that's like a few shots fired, like a little bit at myself as well.
I think also though, like the ego complex goes both ways, like on the training side and the physio side. Like so many trainers try to like do the physio's role, and it's like, no, like that's not your role, right? Like just understanding, like I hate the like what's in my scope and what's not in my scope, because that's so black and white. Like, I mean, I talk to people about mindset, it's probably not in my scope, but it's like it's best for the client, right? And just like I think if everyone in our industry just has that like approach of client centered, and like I can't help this client through the entire journey, but if I build a really good team, like I have a couple of my clients working with Rumi, my friend who's a pelvic floor physiotherapist. Like I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know how to fix your pelvic floor. Like I know a lot, I've done a lot about on diaphragmatic breathing and like tension and fascial stretching, but like I'm not going to sit here and pretend that's my role. Like I just want to know, like, what does that professional think that specializes in that thing, and then how can we integrate that back into the program? So I feel like the ego complex, like it is a little bit shots fired, but it definitely goes both ways, like on the training and physio side. I want to talk a little bit about running, because like we just mentioned it. We've had a couple of conversations on this, and something that I, as a trainer, and I know that you have mentioned this too, have experienced over the past year, like all of these people that were in lockdown didn't really have like the gym to go to, or maybe like any equipment. So they're like, oh, I'll just take up running. And I feel like we're seeing a lot of these things now where it's like you started running, or like even walking, like we were talking about one of our clients the other day, like going from zero walking to a ton of walking or hiking or whatever, and not having like the tissue tolerance or the stability or those types of things in place first. Is that something that you've seen a lot of with, like, what kinds of things are you seeing like coming out of the lockdowns?
Literally so many running things. It's wild. So this, definitely like at the end of probably last summer, and then like recently when we've had like our real, like these bouts of like really good weather, lots of things, just like pretty much everywhere from like foot pain, heel pain, calf pain, knee pain, hip pain. Like the whole entire lower limb has presented in an increase in running. And it definitely, lower limb is probably the more common type thing. Like some people get like that tension up into like their upper traps, but like when they get tired and like their traps are at their ears and they're breathing like up and down versus like outwards. So that's a thing, but not so much as like a pain, more of just like, I'm tired because I have never run before. So tons, like so many of those cases. And then the other thing that I've within the running like field, are people like changing their shoes to like zero drop or like more minimal as well. Again, like this will come back to like the rest of the conversation in terms of like getting ready for running. But it's just that idea of just everyone jumped into it. Which is one of like, I see this quote sometimes around, I don't even know where, but just the fact that like anyone can be a runner. And it's like, this is true. Like, yes. But again, it's that thing of just like, what was your body doing before? What is like, and then what are you asking of it now, essentially? And I just don't think that people think about that, because running is so easy. You just like wear the pair of shoes that you've had in your closet for all of time, and then like head out on the streets and you're like, sweet, I'm going to go for that 5K that I should that I should be able to do. Like, that's what I expect my body to do, because that's what I always do, is I just go do a 5K. But those people have presented in clinic often. So
Yeah, I even have these conversations, like I'll have like a check-in call with a client and they'll be like, yeah, I ran like 8K yesterday. And I'm like, whoa. Like, back up. You ran 8K yesterday? Like, where was this in our conversations before? You ran 8K.
Yeah. Were you gonna tell me? Like, what was your plan?
Like, okay, will you at least let me like make you a proper warm up and like, and then I have to have that conversation, and it's like, you've been training for, like, I want you to do whatever you want to do, but like use me in the situation to be that person that helps you build up in an appropriate way. Because then you're going to call me next week and be like, oh my God, Hannah, my low back hurts. Like, I think it was those glute bridges. And it's like, it's not the glute bridges.
Yeah.
You ran 8K and you hadn't run at all for years, right? It's just like, it's so interesting to me how it's, like you said, like, go grab those shoes that you've had for like 3 years sitting in the closet and then just get out there and go. But like, there is so much demand on the body.
There's so much demand. Yeah, and walking too. Yeah. And the thing that I've actually had to differentiate with clients is, and this is not, I don't want it to be too technical, but literally just like as a super generic difference, walking is like heel toe. So like I get a lot of like heel impact clients, and then running is usually a bit more like midfoot, front foot, depending how fast you're going, which is a different demand. And so it's just one of those things where it's like, just because it is walking and slower, like it still is a different impact that you're getting that, you weren't doing for whatever reason for however long, and all of a sudden you're doing it again. So like, it still is one of those things that your body just has to like accumulate time with. So I've had that conversation a few times as well. Just like, oh, I thought walking would be fine. It's like, it is fine. Like, that is so great. Like, I'm so glad. But going from like 0 to 100 is just like a lot in one go.
Yeah, I mean, like, I even experienced that myself because I moved in a city, and then I'm just like, oh my gosh, I love my life. I'm walking everywhere. I'm walking to get my groceries. I'm walking down to the river, and then all of a sudden it's been 3 hours, and I'm like, I have responsibilities. I need to get back, but it's like now an hour back, and then I end up walking like 3-4 miles, and even that, for some, like, a trained individual, like, I feel it the next day.
Yeah, you're like, wait, why do my feet hurt?
Yeah, like, my feet hurt, my calves hurt, like, I feel like something in my glutes, like,
totally.
I think people just severely underestimate like the demands on the body. I do want to talk about also, you mentioned the footwear thing. Like, the minimal footwear is definitely kind of becoming trendy. I have obviously like my own like opinions and experiences like with that, but I do want to go back to a point that you made. Like, I so agree with just being really conscious of that progression. Like, if that is something that you want to do, like, so many people going from the cushioniest, that's not a word, but like the most cushion to like nothing. And then running and like thinking of the demand that's already on the body, and then going from that cushioned footwear to nothing that's really intense.
Totally. Yeah. Like, that's intense if you weren't even running. And then you add in like the amount of like, I feel like I'm pretty sure it's like 6 to 8 times our body weight or something. Like, I don't know, there's quite an increase in just that impact every single step. And it's like, again, even if you just go for what you think is a short run, like 3K, think about how many times your like legs are turning over in that run, and how many times each foot is hitting the ground. And now you took away, it's like cushion, and now it's basically nothing. And it's just, again, it's a lot. It's too much too soon again. And then adding in no cushion at all when your body is used to cushion as well. So again, just basically gradual in most situations, gradual progression into like less cushion, gradual introduction to walking, gradual introduction to running would basically be the safest way to go.
Yeah, I think too, like, proper foot care is such a huge piece of like the health puzzle. Like, if you are trying to do these things, like, I'll take one day a week and I'll just like do some foot care, like intentional foot care stuff, like some like foot sensitivity stuff, some like control of like my toes, and like some ankle stiffness work and mobility. And like, if you're running and you don't do those things, like, oh my gosh, get on it.
You're just missing like a little bit of like a point in where you could be improving on. And so like I think this, like I put up a post recently that was kind of like a forearm routine, and it was because I had seen a bunch of people who were like really hands-on. So like we had some electricians, like even people like myself, like other massage therapists, arborists, like people who are just like working with their hands like a lot during the day, like that is part of their job. And so basically it was like a form like maintenance routine, because it's like you kind of need to upkeep and maintain and work on those areas because you're using them every single day. And so if running is a goal, or even just like walking is a goal, and that's something that you want to do multiple times a week, it's basically like, yeah, like a foot ankle maintenance routine. Like that is normal. Like that should be okay. That should be something that's like within, yeah, like your warm up routine, cool down routine, like whenever it needs to be. But just basically thinking about those things and yeah, looking at it again, not even as like rehab, or you don't even have to think about it as like prehab. It's just that it's like prepping for what you want to be doing, really.
Yeah, I think it like a lot of this part of the conversation that we've been having goes back to that like reactive versus proactive kind of mindset. And I think like there's a good shift happening with people, because I think
Yeah.
COVID has kind of made some people have some realizations. Like I've
Yeah.
noticed that I've been getting way more clients, like new clients that have never worked out in their life consistently,
Wow.
which is such a cool thing and it makes me so happy. But
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the times like we do fall into, because like all we care about is that like make money, be stressed, pay your
Yeah.
bills, go home,
Yeah.
right? Like instead of that proactive like health approach. And I think a lot of those things come back to that. It's like do that forearm care and do that foot care as part of your weekly health plan versus like only doing this when I'm in pain, or like I'm only going to go get a physio when I'm in pain, or I'm only gonna get chiro when I'm in pain. Like having that proactive outlook on things is like such a game changer.
Yeah, I think that's where people think a bit about if they don't have a trainer or a coach already too. Sometimes that is when they bring it up to me as well, like versus like us having that conversation later. It's like people are kind of like, oh, like should I get a trainer? Like should I be doing those types of things? And I think that's what they're starting to think of. It's just like how can I not basically have this happen again? Like what are those next steps that I can take to then like come out of this stronger and like have a better plan and like that sort of stuff too. So that conversation, which is like, again, it's like that super exciting thing to hear when clients are just like, they ask me that and I'm just like, yes, I'm just like, what a great thought. I'm like, you did it. And then you can kind of like, yeah, nudge them in another direction. But it's basically like people are starting to have that thought process. I guess the thing is though, that sometimes the reason that they're coming to see me is because like they didn't do that and now they're in pain, and then it's like we're sorting that out, and then they're like, okay, like I don't want this to happen again, like what should I do next, or like what should I do moving forward. um and that's even with quarantine too. I think it took people, not everyone had this realization, but a lot of people did, in terms of reevaluating their fitness routine too, which you've probably seen a lot of, is like what we said before, I don't need to go 100% every single day, because it's not sustainable, period. And so then it's kind of like, that's those same sort of questions. It's like, okay, so like, what does fitness look like to me then? Like, how am I going to make this a sustainable part of my life moving forward? And like, what do I want from it too? Because I think I've had a lot of clients who almost like swapped from being like, I need to hit these PRs all the time to, I want to lift heavy because that's fun, but I don't want to be hurt all the time. And like that is, like you're saying, a bit of like that mindset shift. Because yeah, it's great to be strong and it's great to lift and all those types of things. If you're competing, that's your goal, and maybe that's where you need to be going. But lots of our clients are not competing, and so it's like you have a whole life, you have kids, you have your job. It's just like you don't want to be in pain for all those things. So it's like, yeah, those next steps. And so that is, a lot of people have just been like, yeah, like what, like, yeah, do I need a trainer at this point? Or like, how do I change up my fitness routine to make it more sustainable?
Yeah, I love how we like kind of looped back, because that's like we kind of touched on that in the beginning. And like I just want to say this for people that like I know might be listening, because like even as a trainer, like I said, like I've gone through this shift myself, and like right now I work out like intentional planned training session like 2 or 3 times a week. And the rest of it, it's like my NEAT, like my non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is basically like the calories that you're burning without planned exercise or eating or whatever. On a daily basis, like the calories that I burn is like very high because I'm just always out there active, like getting outside, or I'm like standing with clients, walking around, or I'm like doing FST, which is super demanding on the body. And like going through that mindset shift for me, like I used to have so many aches and pains when I trained hard because I couldn't keep up with the care that was needed for the training that I was doing. And now it's like that balance is so freeing. And like that's what I want for everybody. Like I say that to my clients all the time. I'm like, I don't want you to feel like I'm an unrealistic expectation that you have to live up to. Like I want you to look at me and be like, oh, she's normal. Like she's a normal, healthy woman. And like, whatever she's doing, like I could easily implement that into my life. You know what I mean? Like unrealistic expectations from like social media and stuff like that, I think can take people out of that mindset.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I even think about that sometimes with everything that I post too, because it's like I never post those reps that I fail. Or like when I'm trying something new, like no one sees the 3 weeks before I like learned the move. And then I'm like, I just program it in my thing and I like put it up and I'm like, this is the move today. But like I don't show everyone that like literally that was like 3 weeks in the making of like some real ugly reps and like work behind it. And so like I am a bit like I'm definitely guilty of this, and I'm a bit aware of it too, that like it is one of those things where clients especially, they only see those hard workouts that I post up as well. And so it's I do try and bring attention to it when I take like recovery weeks, or I take like low impact workouts, or like I bring that attention, because it's like I think that definitely just posting like those the high intensity and like that expectation and like always moving and all that sort of stuff. Because I had a few conversations with clients and they're just like, wow, like you're doing all these things all the time. Like, and I'm like, oh, no, like it's really not like that. Like I should probably bring more attention to those days where, it is like, maybe the workout, or like, maybe I was too tired even, because like our jobs are physical and like draining, and like we are working our bodies and our brains at the same time. And so it is a bit of like finding that balance and being like, not, again, you and I, like with our jobs, like not feeling guilty that like we didn't train today, because it's like actually we had a full day of work, and like this is the better choice for our body right now, is like that recovery side of things. And whether that's going to be a walk, or whether that's going to be like a little lie on the mat, or maybe it's none of those things. But like I feel like I was in the same boat too, that it was just like I started recording all these workouts, and then I was like, well, I can never stop recording these workouts. I was like, shit, I'm too deep into this. But
you put that like pressure on yourself, and like it's so weird to think about, like, because I know we've had these conversations before, like even when we first met, the like thought of like influencing people. And then it's like like I hate to like say it that way, because like I don't want to call it that, but like also a lot
what's happening
are looking at our stuff every day.
Totally.
I have this like weird relationship with it, but it's like sometimes like, oh my God, this is actually really a lot of responsibility, because like what if someone that I don't even know is like doing everything that they see me do? Right. And it's like, that's why it's important to be real and like show up in a real way in your posts, and be like you said, like I know you'll post like taking a recovery week, and like on Friday, oh my God, it's Friday today. What was yesterday? Thursday. I'm in like full. Yesterday I posted, like I put in my calendar Hannah time from 1 to 3. And like something that I've been like forcing myself to do so that I have boundaries. And so many people responded, and they were like, thank you for sharing this. Like I go through this too, and I really love to see that like you're just a normal person, and like you're not doing this like these crazy 16-hour days and like hustle grind every day. And I think like we have a responsibility to, whether it's like the mental health stuff or like physical stuff, to share those things too, because so many people don't, and then it gives people
Mhm.
that unrealistic expectation.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's like where it kind of comes to with how we've had success and worked so well with our clients together too, because they probably get, or like I hope that that comes across when we're like working with them as well, because like if they're checking in with you and like their program is being is like relevant to that, and like you're checking in and kind of like giving them those like that information and those pieces too, because sometimes I actually have people who maybe some of our clients and maybe some who just have other programs, but sometimes they're just like, oh, that day I just did my physio rehab exercises because they're like less high intense, so it's like a bit more of like that recovery sort of feel, or like that prep sort of feel, rather than the high intensity, and they're like, that was what I needed that day, and I was like, cool, great, like good choice. Because it was probably one of those things that if you go and push it that day, like maybe that wasn't going to be the best decision. So it's nice having that balance as well, and like having those choices too, and then like when they have like access to you and they can chat to you about that too, because it's like we just talked about how we go through that, so it's like clients are probably going through that as well. So when you're able to chat to them about it and then be like, yeah, like I wrote you this training program, but like we're going to adapt it to you and like what's going on, which we have done for a few of our clients too, that they've gone through some of those, especially in this like pandemic, like a few more stressful periods than
Yeah.
normal. I think that our clients have really benefited from that honesty and that individualization as well, that we can give them around that, knowing that we've both kind of experienced it too.
Yeah, I would say like the most proud I ever am. And I had this conversation this morning with a client because she's very, very type A, like my personal training client. She's so type A, and like I've seen her come such a long way. And like she said something this morning. She was like, I'm actually like okay if I just do 2 workouts a week and I just like really kill it. And I was like, I'm so proud of you right now. She was one of those people that was like, didn't listen to her own like biofeedback. And like, I feel always so proud when people say, like, oh, yesterday I actually decided to like do this, like you said, like just do my physio exercises because I felt this. And like, so many people are out of touch with that, like listening to your body and what it needs with honesty, not like my body needs like McDonald's every day,
Oh
like
yeah, yeah,
actually
totally.
honest, like what does my body need? um when you see that shift in people, it's like it's the best.
And I think we, like, again, this is me just talking both of us up, but like we try to empower our clients to then be able to make those calls too, that it's not like a reliance on us, that it's like we're, yeah, like if you didn't know something earlier, like we're here to kind of like educate and like provide that information, but in a way that hopefully you take that in and then do with it, like again, with like what works for you, and then yeah, they can make those calls down the road, to then yeah, basically just like feel more confident, feel more empowered themselves, because that will even just take away some of that stress around stuff too, because it's now like in like the locus of your control, and like you're able to kind of like make those decisions too. So I think you do a really good job at like, yeah, empowering your clients, and it's like, yeah, we're working on this together, but you're going to help me make some of these decisions, and then you're going to kind of make these decisions as well.
Yeah, it's so important. um I think you do a really great job of that too, like with the open-ended questions. And now we're just like talking ourselves up, so like
We're great.
anyone wants to reach out to us, we're a great team. um I have one question that I've been asking people um on my podcast,
Yeah.
because I'm always curious to hear this. um if you are speaking to like 18-year-old Hannah, like that like young adult Hannah, and she's
Yeah.
like going through her health and fitness journey, what advice would you give her today?
Right. Man, that seems so long ago now too. That's like 10 years ago.
Mm.
Um, where was I at 10 years ago? Um, oh man, you didn't prep me for this. I'm like, gotta think about it hard. Uh, and it's probably gonna sound so like cliche, and it's probably, yeah, it's probably just gonna sound cliche, but it was almost like one of those things where it's just like, you don't need to fit into a mold of what fitness or what working out looks like. I feel like from like a young age and just like the body type that I have and that sort of stuff, there was always kind of like expectations and like discussions around that. And so then when you're 18 and like we have Instagram, however old Instagram is now, but it's basically like you're seeing all the social media, and like that was I was still playing soccer and everything, but it was just like that idea of like where you're going to go with it and what that plan was. And yeah, just not having to basically like put yourself into one mold. And I think the mold that I would have been at that time actually was just like a pure like sport team mode, because I was just playing team sports. Like I didn't really do this type of training back then. And it's really tough as an athlete, which you'll know too, that it's like it's part of your identity, and it still is. Like separating myself from that would be weird. But it's just, yeah, like just you don't need to fit into that mold. Like play around with it, see what you enjoy. If you're not enjoying it anymore, find something else.
That was like my favorite answer so far. Sorry to the other people, but probably because I like relate really hard.
Yeah.
Because when you go from like, I have a lot of clients actually that were like old teammates of mine, like when I played college soccer, and it's like going from that athletic environment and like sports team to like, oh, I'm on my own now.
Yeah.
How do I be healthy like a normal person, right?
Totally.
Like I resonate so hard with your answer, because like I went through that struggle too of like,
yeah,
that all or nothing sports mentality to like, oh well, I just like don't really care anymore, so I'm just gonna like go out drinking and like not really care about my health, right? I think it's like a really good relatable thing for people to hear, so thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for
Sorry
asking.
I put you on the spot,
yeah, that was I had to think about it.
Where can people find you? Like if they kind of listened in and they're like, I really like the sound of Hannah, I want to book in with her, like what does that look like for them?
Sweet. You can reach me on, the easiest is probably Instagram. So just at hand physio. I also, so like just send me a DM. That's super, super easy. I have a website, handphysio.com, where you can just like, maybe if you need to read a bit more about me, but you can also just go on my Instagram and you'll probably learn more from there. And then I am working at a private practice clinic downtown Calgary. It's called Dynamic YYC. So that's where then you can find me to actually then like book in, pretty central. So that would be like the easiest way to go about it. But yeah, just send me a message on Instagram if you have questions about like physio, coaching, anything really. And then we can kind of go from there.
If you're listening, you should definitely message Hannah, especially if you've always been looking for that physio, like you've been looking for that physio that you have a great relationship with. Like I can guarantee you that you'll feel that way about Hannah. Anyway.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me today. This was so fun. I feel like we could do like 10 of these in a row, but
yeah, probably just on like a slightly different topic. It'll probably come back to like the same themes, but it's just like, yeah, slightly different topic. So yeah, if people want to hear more, then like shoot us a message on what you want us to chat about.
yeah. If you guys enjoyed the podcast, like let us know maybe if you would like us to expand on any of those topics, because we could probably talk forever. So
seriously, yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, hand squared back again. That was fun. Thank you so much.
Thanks.